What's going on, everybody? John here with Bearded Outdoorsman Chronicles, just coming at you with another gear review. And today, we're going to dive into Sitka versus Kuiu. How I ended up with both, what I like and dislike about each brand, and anything that I can think of that might help you make an informed decision on which pattern is going to be best for you. So, I'm going to go ahead and dive into Sitka first because this is the one that I've been utilizing the longest and I have the most experience with, and also the most articles of clothing of. So, I have been using Sitka for about 7 or 8 years now. I decided to treat myself prior to my first Idaho archery elk hunt, and I went out and bought the Equinox lineup along with a few other pieces of clothing. And over the years, I've continued to just add more and more and more to the sets. Up to now, I have the complete incinerator lineup for late season. So, to dive into a few things that I do like about Sitka. My bread and butter is archery hunting whitetails here in Pennsylvania. And I do so out of typically a hang-on or a saddle setup. So, from the hang-on perspective, one thing that I just thought was fantastic engineering from the Sitka company was every coat that I have from Sitka with the OptiFade pattern has the flap in the back to run your tether for your safety harness out of. Prior to purchasing this gear, I would always just run it up, out my collar, and if I ran my harness a little snug, that would end up pulling my coat away from my back, kind of like this, and let rain, cold air, all that nasty stuff just sail right down my back. So I thought that was just some great ingenuity from Sitka. A few other things that I do like about this clothing brand is, at least with the Equinox jacket, there is a built-in face mask, which I, in all honesty, do not utilize very often. Maybe if I'm hunting a little bit lower and I want to try to conceal myself a little bit better, or even just a little extra layer of warmth. That's about all I'm really going to use it for. Turkey hunting as well, I will throw that out there. And then we'll hop over to their Equinox pants to dive into some other features that I've grown to really enjoy from Sitka. So inside the waistband of these pants, I'm sure you can't really tell, but this band right here is like a gummy material, which really helps keep your pants where you put them. I found that to be very useful, and I don't tend to have these pants slide down on me quite as much as I would with some other, the jeans that I wear every day and things like that. Another, what I thought was just a nifty feature, is they reinforce high wear areas, like here in your pocket, your front pocket, where you would clip, your pocket knife, maybe a little folding saw, something like that. They've put like a rubberized coating there, and I got to be honest with you, using these pants for the past 7 or 8 years, that still looks like brand new, pretty much. I don't know if you can tell, but there's virtually no wear on it, which there is proof in that innovation. The zipper pockets, they also went ahead and added that same rubberized coating around it just to kind of reinforce that area, which again looks still virtually brand new to this day after all these years. And another nice touch is, this is the cargo pants pocket on my Equinox pants. They kind of reinvented the button a little bit. I'm not going to give them too much credit here because I don't know who decided to come up with this design, but if you listen, it's a very, very quiet snap. And I mean, you can even take your time a little bit more and virtually make no noise utilizing those buttons. So it's the little creature comforts like that, the extra thought that went into this clothing, that has really made me enjoy this brand. And I also have to say that this camo pattern, I think, just looks fantastic in late season out of a tree. If you picture yourself looking up at the skyline where you would be in a tree stand, you're going to be matted up against the bark of whatever tree you're in, and pretty much just the skyline in late season when all the leaves are down. And I think the amount of white and gray that they incorporate into this design just really breaks up your pattern very well. You know, ultimately, sitting still is going to be one of your greatest camouflages, but I do think that this particular pattern, from an elevated standpoint, just really does shine. Like I said, I've added quite a few different layers over the past about 8 years to my Sitka setup. So I do have the most of this. I do utilize this the most. But again, my bread and butter is hunting whitetails here in Pennsylvania. So with the exception of early season, you know, as you progress into later archery season, rifle season, late season / flintlock, this camo pattern from an elevated position, I think, is just fantastic. Some things that I maybe necessarily don't love about the Sitka is obviously the price point. I mean, I think that's what's going to deter a lot of us from adding to these collections to our everyday wear. And then I'm not going to hold this against them too much. These pants are quite a few years old, like I said, but they are fraying pretty good. I mean, there's really no shame in that. And I'm not going to hold that against them because these aren't a brush pant. You know, I've been really putting them through the paces over the years, but you know, they've seen better days. But really, with how many miles these pants have on them, I don't think that there's any shame in that. Probably the single most valid gripe is going to be the price point, and that's going to go for not only the Sitka but the Kuiu and all the other, I'll call them flagship camo brands that are out right now. You know, you're really battling some obscure pricing here. So I'll go ahead and use that as a segue into the Kuiu. The reason why I started adding some Kuiu to my rotation, I'll say, is because a few years ago on an elk hunt, I got caught in a rainstorm, got absolutely soaked, didn't have my rain gear with me, and I did not take a spare pair of pants. So one of my hunting buddies was kind enough to lend me his Kuiu guide pants, and after wearing them around the mountains for the day, I think we did about 11 miles that day, I really fell in love with some of the creature comforts that Kuiu had provided. So I kept an eye on their brand. I watched them for a little while, and they tend to have a pretty good sell every year. So once that sell hit, I started buying some articles of their clothing, and I'll go ahead and dive into why I kind of fell in love with these, especially for hunting out west. So this is my guide jacket. I have the guide pants as well. I'll go ahead and pull them out here in a second. And I have a few other articles of their clothing, some base layer systems, the puffies, things like that. But we'll go ahead and take a look at the armpit of the guide jacket. So if you take a look here, there is a great big vent that you can open up to let excess heat out. When you're putting the miles on your boots, being able to stay warm and regulate your body temperature can really be a tough trick at times. And these ventilation systems that Kuiu has placed on a lot of their clothing items, I found to do just an absolutely fantastic job of helping me regulate my body heat as I'm hiking, you know, letting me stay warm, but also the high heat areas, just go ahead and vent them out. So these are the guide pants. And like I was saying, right here along the outside of your hip, a great big mesh lined ventilation system there as well. And I really appreciate the mesh there because that keeps things out of your pants that you don't necessarily want in there. But I also find it to be extremely breathable and useful while putting the miles on. Now, I do find that Kuiu tends to go with a little bit more of an athletic fit as well. So when I am moving a lot, I tend to enjoy that a little bit more than the baggier clothing that I tend to find with Sitka and things of that nature. So with that being said, they do seem to run a little tight at times. With your pants, you might want to maybe consider sizing up just so you can put some layers underneath if that is your game plan. But the pattern itself, I'm not saying I don't wear these in Pennsylvania. If you go through some of my hunting videos, you are absolutely going to see me utilizing Kuiu as well here. Where I tend to find this camo pattern to shine is early season. Early archery, when the leaves are still green, you know, the forest still has an awful lot of green in it. And actually like these for turkey hunting a lot too. And shed hunting because of the ability to open up all these vents. So I don't solely use Kuiu out west, and I don't solely use Sitka in Pennsylvania. It's the time of year and the circumstances that I'm in kind of dictate what I'm wearing. Now, to take a broader stroke here, another pro that I will say for Sitka opposed to Kuiu is you can go to Sportsman's Warehouse or a lot of these other major outdoor retailers, and they're going to carry Sitka. So even if you don't intend to buy the clothing there, you can at least try it on and get your fitment down. I personally have never seen Kuiu in a store. So I was a little disappointed when I first ordered some pants that I would normally size myself into. I ended up having to send them back and size up, like I said earlier. So that is a little bit of a drawback to the Kuiu, something to prepare yourself for. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think the biggest drawback to both these brands is going to be the price point, if we're going to keep it real here. I mean, spending this kind of money on your hunting clothes is a tough pill to swallow, because the truth of the matter is your layering system is going to be way more important. You can honestly go to, you know, Walmart or any other clothing retailer and just buy some good base layer systems and layer your clothing up, and you're going to be just as warm, if not potentially warmer, than you might be with some of these other brands. And the prices that you're going to pay for that same layering system in these brands is going to be quite a bit higher. With that being said, I'm going to kind of quit rambling on about, you know, the price point and things like that, and just summarize it as, I don't think you'll be disappointed if you do decide to invest in either one of these. Just keep in mind some of the things I said and why I utilize one in one situation opposed to utilizing the other. And if you can kind of hone in on one of those things and find what you're going to be utilizing them the most for, I think you're going to be awfully happy with them. You know, the big takeaway here is the small little creature comforts that these brands are doing that others aren't. You know, the quiet buttons, the hole in the back for your harness, the ventilation systems. Those are the things that really make these brands shine, in my opinion. Now, in the future, I would absolutely love to get my hands on some First Light, some Osseo, some Origin, but I'm pretty much done spending any more money on any kind of camo until these are totally wore out. So I hope that helps you make an informed decision, running you through some of the pros and cons with each of these brands, why I have both, and how I utilize them. Until next time, thanks for watching, and shoot straight.